Chosen ones. There's a hush falling over a conversation you're utterly unaware of. Picture a mahogany-lined room, the air thick with tension. Powerful individuals, their faces etched with concern, are gathered around a polished table. They're dissecting your life not because you've erred, but because they've come to a chilling realization. Their judgment of you was catastrophically wrong. These aren't just everyday people. They're the architects of influence, the ones who craft decisions that reverberate through the very foundations of our systems. And at this very moment, they're in a frantic scramble, desperately seeking a way to undo the damage they inflicted when they attempted to bury you alive. Let me illuminate what's truly transpiring here. A person you held dear, someone you entrusted with pieces of your soul, meticulously plotted to obliterate your existence. Not just wound you, but utterly shatter you. They envisioned you vanished, erased from memory, unfairly blamed for transgressions you never committed. And for a fleeting moment, it appeared their wicked scheme might succeed. Fabricated evidence materialized. Truths were twisted into grotesque lies. Your reputation was dragged through the mud, tarnished by shadows you never even approached. But here's the critical element they overlooked. You're still standing, resilient and unbroken, not merely surviving, but flourishing in ways that have left these power brokers in a state of utter disbelief. And now, they're engaged in urgent discussions about how to rectify their mistakes before the truth erupts, too deafening to ignore. This isn't about seeking forgiveness or empty apologies. This delves into a far more profound realm. Divine protection operating on a scale that transcends human comprehension. The first, and most vital, truth you must grasp is that what befell you was never random. It was a meticulously orchestrated plot, fueled by precision and pure malice. Perhaps it was a past romantic partner or even a current one. Someone who once whispered sweet promises in your ear, secretly plotting and calculating how to frame you for their own nefarious deeds. And they likely didn't act alone. A family member may have been involved, possibly a sibling whose physical resemblance to you was close enough that, with the right wig and carefully chosen angles, they could convincingly impersonate you in photographs or surveillance footage. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a premeditated character assassination, designed to unjustly imprison you while they walked away scot-free. They even went so far as to take out a life insurance policy on you. The sum keeps resonating in the spiritual realm. $200,000. That's the calculated price they placed on your life. Their intention was far more sinister than simply discrediting you. They sought your death, and they intended to profit from it. Let that appalling truth sink in for a moment. Someone who professed to love you sat down and coldly assigned a monetary value to your elimination. They completed the paperwork, devised elaborate plans, enlisted accomplices, and set in motion a chain of events intended to end with you either in a grave or behind bars. But this is where their meticulously crafted plan began to unravel. You distanced yourself from these individuals before their wicked scheme could fully materialize. Your intuition, that inner voice that whispers warnings when danger approaches, alerted you to the wrongness of the situation. You couldn't articulate it fully at the time, but you knew instinctively that distance and separation were essential. So you created it. You withdrew from relationships that felt toxic, chaotic, and reckless. You prioritized peace over drama. You valued your own well-being over attempting to fix broken individuals who had no intention of healing. And that choice, that seemingly straightforward decision to safeguard your energy, ultimately saved your life. While you were forging your new reality, living your life and concentrating on personal growth and genuine progress, they were diligently fabricating false evidence. They created surveillance footage that didn't depict you, arranged financial transactions that were traceable to accounts you never opened, and solicited testimonies from individuals claiming to have seen you in locations you've never visited. They constructed an elaborate false narrative, piling lie upon lie, assuming that the sheer volume of falsehoods would overwhelm the truth. They wrongly believed that once the authorities focused their attention on you, the momentum would become unstoppable. But they were mistaken. The investigation that commenced without your knowledge almost immediately revealed inconsistencies. Phone records didn't align. Alibis held up under scrutiny. Physical evidence pointed away from you, rather than toward you. Every thread they believed they had woven into a noose unraveled upon closer inspection. But here's what's truly remarkable. The investigators didn't simply determine that you were innocent. They discovered that you were the victim. Everything intended to prove your guilt instead exposed the conspiracy against you. The very evidence manufactured to condemn you became irrefutable proof of your persecution. Now, these individuals in positions of authority are facing a dire situation. They acted on flawed information. They pursued an innocent person while the real perpetrators walked free. They permitted biased assumptions, rooted in rumors and fabricated evidence, to dictate their actions. And now, they confront the potential for lawsuits, public exposure, and the complete destruction of their credibility and careers because they failed to perform their duties properly. They didn't conduct a thorough investigation. They didn't question the narrative being presented to them. They passively accepted what appeared to be compelling evidence without digging deeper to verify its authenticity. So, here's the substance of the discussions unfolding in that room right now. They're contemplating settlements, out-of-court agreements, and non-disclosure arrangements. They're strategizing how to quietly make this all disappear before it explodes into a massive public scandal. They're debating who should approach you and with what offer. They're calculating the minimum payouts necessary to avoid maximum liability. They're meticulously reviewing every misstep and assessing the potential damage this could inflict on their organization if it proceeds to trial. Their motivations aren't rooted in justice or genuine remorse. They're driven by self-preservation and damage control. But let's also delve into what else they're discussing. The aspect that genuinely unsettles them. They're impressed by you. Genuinely, deeply impressed. Because while all of this was unfolding in the shadows, while accusations were being whispered and investigations were being conducted without your awareness, you continued to move forward. You kept building. You persevered in succeeding despite the weight of false accusations hanging over you like invisible chains. You achieved feats that should have been impossible under such duress. You advanced in your career. You launched projects. You maintained your inner peace. You presented yourself to the world with confidence and purpose. They're reviewing recordings of your communications, the monitoring that was conducted under the guise of investigative purposes, and they're finding nothing incriminating. Just someone living their life with integrity. Just someone working diligently, treating others with respect, and remaining focused on legitimate goals. No hidden conspiracies, no secret dealings. Just a person being exactly who they appeared to be. Honest, hardworking, and innocent. This is where the meeting takes a truly fascinating turn, because now they're not just trying to mitigate liability. They're seeking ways to transform this into an opportunity. They're brainstorming how to bring you into their fold, how to offer you something valuable enough to secure your acceptance of their terms and your agreement to move forward without pursuing the justice you rightfully deserve. They're formulating offers that will initially sound generous, a job opportunity, funding for a business venture, connections to influential networks, products, platforms, visibility. They'll present these as goodwill gestures, opportunities extended because they recognize your talent and potential. But be under no illusion about what's truly happening. They're attempting to buy your silence. They're trying to control the narrative before you can. They're striving to transform you from a victim seeking justice into a beneficiary of their generosity. They'll never issue a direct apology, because an apology implies an admission of wrongdoing, and admitting wrongdoing exposes them to the legal consequences they desperately seek to avoid. So instead, they'll proffer opportunity disguised as recognition. They'll laud your resilience while secretly hoping you never publicly investigate the reasons why you needed to be resilient in the first place. Now, this is where you must pay extremely close attention. Within the next 7 to 10 days, someone will reach out to you. It might be a direct approach, or it might come through an intermediary. It could take the form of a business opportunity or a casual conversation that gradually reveals its true purpose. They're going to test the waters, assess your awareness of the events that have transpired behind the scenes, and gauge how much you know and what you might demand. They'll be polite, professional, and cautious with their words. They'll make offers that sound appealing, that might genuinely improve certain aspects of your life, and you'll need to decide how to respond. Not from anger, though anger would be completely justified. Not from desperation, even if you've been facing financial or professional challenges, but from a position of power because that's what you actually possess right now, even if you don't fully recognize it yet. You hold the power to expose corruption, to demand accountability, and to reject their attempts at a cheap resolution. You hold the truth, and the truth, backed by evidence, is the most potent weapon in any conflict. If this message resonates with your spirit, share this video so that more chosen ones like you can find it. They are aware of this. That's why they're scrambling. That's why the conversation is happening with such urgency. They know that if you decide to pursue this fully, to bring everything into the light, their carefully constructed reputations will crumble. Their institutions will face scrutiny. Their careers will end in scandal. They're hoping you don't understand your own leverage. They're hoping you'll be grateful for whatever scraps they offer and quietly accept their terms. But you are not who they think you are. You never were. That's why their entire plan collapsed from the beginning. They built their conspiracy on a fundamental misunderstanding of your character. They assumed you were like them, willing to cut corners, compromise your integrity, and participate in shady schemes if the price was right. They assumed you could be the villain in their story because they themselves operate from such deeply corrupted values that they can't even imagine someone genuinely living differently. They scrutinized your life and projected their own shadows onto it. When they witnessed your success, they assumed it stemmed from the same dark dealings that fuel their own advancement. When they saw your confidence, they assumed it originated from hidden wrongdoing that rendered you untouchable. They couldn't fathom that someone might simply work hard, remain honest, and trust in divine timing. That worldview is incomprehensible to individuals who have compromised their souls for temporary gains. So, they created a version of you that aligned with their understanding of how the world functions. They cast you in their narrative as a fellow traveler on dark paths, someone who would naturally be involved in insurance fraud, criminal conspiracies, and calculated violence. And when reality refused to conform to their fiction, when every investigation cleared you of any wrongdoing, they were genuinely shocked. Not because you're so extraordinary, but because their moral compass is so broken that they can't recognize basic integrity when they encounter it. This is actually what impresses them most. Not your achievements, though those are notable. Not your resilience, though that's undeniable. What truly stuns them is the realization that you've been operating from an entirely different value system all along. You've been playing an entirely different game, while they mistakenly assumed you were simply better at concealing your moves in the same corrupt game they're playing. The discovery that you weren't playing their game at all, that you were building something real and legitimate while they were scheming and manipulating, has compelled them to view you in a completely new light. And here's the underlying spiritual truth to it all. You were protected because you're destined for something they can't touch. There's a divine plan unfolding in your life that supersedes human schemes. Every time they thought they had you cornered, circumstances shifted in ways that can't be explained by luck or coincidence. Evidence surfaced that exonerated you. Witnesses came forward unexpectedly. Technology revealed truths that should have remained concealed. Timing repeatedly worked in your favor in ways that defy probability. You sensed this protection even when you couldn't articulate it. There were moments when you should have been at a certain place at a certain time, but something delayed you. Phone calls that prevented you from walking into traps. Sudden illnesses that confined you to your home on days when danger was lurking. Intuitive hunches that prompted you to alter your plans at the last minute. These weren't random occurrences. This was divine intervention operating through the very fabric of your daily life, redirecting your steps, closing doors that appeared inviting but led to destruction, and opening pathways you didn't even know existed. The individuals in that room, the ones engaged in urgent discussions about how to handle you, sense this even if they lack the vocabulary to express it. They feel the weight of something beyond their control operating in your favor. It makes them uneasy, because they're accustomed to manipulating outcomes, leveraging power and influence to shape reality according to their desires. But with you, nothing unfolds as it should. Their meticulously laid plans collapse. Their fabricated evidence crumbles. Their conspiracies expose themselves, and they're left scrambling to contain the damage, while you continue to move forward as if their schemes never existed. Because, in the truest sense, their schemes don't exist in your reality. They exist in the shadow realm where corruption breeds more corruption, where people sacrifice each other for profit and power, where souls are traded for temporary advantage. You don't inhabit that realm. You never have. You walk in the light, and light has a way of banishing shadows simply by existing. You don't have to confront darkness directly. You simply have to continue being who you are, operating from a place of integrity, and trusting that the truth eventually surfaces and justice eventually prevails. Now, let's address the specific individuals who orchestrated this attack against you, the narcissistic romantic partner or ex-partner who sits at the center of this web. This person is driven by an insatiable need for recognition, status, and validation from external sources. They measure their worth by the amount of attention they receive, the power they appear to wield, and how they're perceived by others. And when you ceased feeding their insatiable hunger for validation, when you recognized their toxicity and distanced yourself, they perceived it as a mortal wound to their ego. Narcissists can't tolerate being left behind. They can't accept that someone chose peace over their drama or self-respect over their manipulation. So, they retaliate not openly, because that would jeopardize their carefully curated public image, but through covert schemes designed to destroy you while maintaining their facade of innocence. They recruit others into their campaign, spinning tales that portray them as the victim of your wrongdoing, and building sympathy and support from people who are unaware that they're being used as weapons in someone else's vendetta. This person enabled or directly participated in having a family member, likely a sibling, engage in activities designed to be mistaken for your involvement. Surveillance footage, witness accounts, and digital trails were all carefully constructed to place you at the scenes of crimes you never committed. They possessed enough knowledge of your life, your patterns, and your appearance to create a convincing false trail. They weaponized intimate knowledge gained during your relationship, using it as ammunition against you after it ended. They betrayed your trust. And they did all of this while maintaining relationships with people who still perceive them as charming, successful, and admirable. That's the most disturbing aspect of narcissistic predators. They're often highly functional in public spheres. They can be charismatic, accomplished, seemingly generous, and supportive. The mask only slips in private with individuals they feel safe enough to abuse. Everyone else witnesses the performance and can't imagine the cruelty occurring behind closed doors. So, when victims speak up, they're often disbelieved, because the abuser has already constructed a social fortress of credibility. But masks crack under sustained pressure, and that pressure is building now. Because investigations have a way of uncovering more than the specific crime being examined. When authorities start pulling threads, entire tapestries of deception unravel, financial irregularities surface, patterns of behavior emerge, and other victims find the courage to come forward. What began as an investigation into one incident expands into a much larger examination of someone's entire operation. And that's precisely what's happening here. The spotlight that was intended to destroy you is now shifting toward its real target. Your ex-partner is realizing that they can no longer control this. They believe they could frame you, cash in on your life insurance, and walk away unscathed. But divine justice doesn't operate on human timelines or according to human understanding of how things should work. Sometimes justice arrives exactly when the perpetrator feels safest, exactly when they think they've gotten away with everything. The hammer falls when they least expect it, and it falls with the accumulated weight of every evil action they thought went unnoticed. And the family member who participated in this scheme, who was willing to impersonate you and engage in activities designed to destroy your reputation and possibly your life, is facing their own reckoning. Accomplices often break first under pressure. They lack the same narcissistic armor as the primary manipulator. They experience guilt, fear, and the weight of approaching consequences. They begin to realize that loyalty to a toxic person is about to cost them everything. And when investigators apply pressure, when they're offered deals in exchange for testimony, accomplices frequently turn on each other. This is why the meeting is happening with such urgency. The individuals in positions of authority know that this situation is unstable. They know that any day now, someone involved in the conspiracy against you might decide to save themselves by revealing everything. They know that the longer this drags on, the more likely it is that the truth will emerge in ways they can't control. So, they want to lock you into an agreement now, before you fully comprehend the extent of what was done to you, before you realize how much leverage you actually have. They're going to come with offers that sound significant, financial compensation that seems generous until you consider what you've been through and what you're entitled to, career opportunities that sound impressive until you realize they're designed to keep you dependent on the same system that failed you, and non-disclosure agreements framed as protecting your privacy when they're really protecting the institution's reputation. They'll use language about moving forward and not dwelling on the past, and taking the high road, all coded phrases designed to make you feel like seeking full justice is somehow petty or vindictive. But here's what you need to understand. At the deepest level, you don't owe these people anything, not your silence, not your forgiveness, and not your cooperation in their damage control. They failed you catastrophically. They allowed bias and laziness to guide their investigation. They caused you harm through their incompetence and unwillingness to challenge a false narrative. And now, they want you to make their lives easier by accepting whatever they offer and disappearing quietly. You have every right to demand full accountability. You have every right to insist on public acknowledgement of what happened. You have every right to pursue every legal avenue available to you for compensation and justice. You have every right to tell your story loudly and clearly, so that others can learn from your experience. You have every right to refuse any offer that requires your silence or complicity in covering up institutional failure. But you also have the right to choose peace over prolonged conflict. You have the right to accept a settlement if you determine it genuinely serves your interests and allows you to move forward without carrying the weight of an extended legal battle. You have the right to decide that some doors are better closed than forced open, that some fights aren't worth the energy they require, and that sometimes the best revenge is simply living well while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own corruption. Whatever you decide, decide from a place of power rather than reaction. Don't let anger drive you into decisions you'll later regret. Don't let fear of conflict make you accept less than you deserve. Don't let their urgency pressure you into commitments before you've had time to fully understand the situation and consider your options. Take your time. Consult with people who have your genuine best interests at heart. Seek legal counsel from attorneys who specialize in cases like this. Pray, meditate, or sit in silence until you feel clear about the path forward. Because here's the ultimate truth that transcends all the practical considerations. You've already won. The victory occurred the moment their conspiracy collapsed. The victory occurred every day you continued living your life with integrity while they lived in fear of exposure. The victory occurred when divine protection surrounded you so completely that their weapons couldn't touch you. Everything from this point forward is simply choosing how you want to express that victory in the physical realm. They wanted you erased. You're more visible than ever. They wanted you destroyed. You're stronger than you've ever been. They wanted you imprisoned. You're walking in more freedom than they'll ever know, because your conscience is clear and there's never will be. They wanted to profit from your death. Instead, they're about to pay for their crimes. That's not luck. That's not coincidence. That's divine justice operating exactly as it should, restoring balance and ensuring that what was intended for evil gets transformed into your testimony of protection and ultimate vindication. So, when they come with their offers, and they will come soon, remember who you are. Remember that you survived something designed to kill you. Remember that you thrived under pressure that should have crushed you. Remember that you're standing in your truth, while they're scrambling to cover their lies. Remember that you have angels, ancestors, and divine forces operating on your behalf in ways you can't fully see, but can absolutely trust. Remember that you're a chosen one, and chosen ones don't just survive attacks. They transform those attacks into testimonies that inspire others, into lessons that elevate consciousness, and into proof that light always definitively overcomes darkness. The conversation happening in that room right now is about damage control and self-preservation. But the conversation that truly matters is the one unfolding in the spiritual realm, where your victory is already complete, where justice is already rendered, and where your enemies have already fallen, they just don't know it yet. Stay aligned with that higher conversation. Stay rooted in the truth of who you are and whose you are. Stay confident in the protection that has carried you this far and will continue carrying you forward. And when you're ready, when the time is right, step into the fullness of this moment, not as a victim seeking scraps, not as someone grateful for whatever acknowledgement they're willing to give, but as a victor claiming what's rightfully yours, as someone who walked through fire and emerged not just unburned, but refined, purified, and elevated, as a chosen one who knows beyond doubt that you're guided, protected, and destined for greatness that no human conspiracy can prevent. They're impressed by how you succeeded after everything they put you through. Let that impression deepen into awe. Let them see that what they mistook for luck was actually divine favor. Let them understand that the person they tried to destroy was always beyond their reach, operating in a realm they can't access, and protected by forces they can't comprehend. Let your continued success be the loudest testimony to the futility of fighting against someone heaven has marked for elevation. You didn't just survive the dreadful conspiracy against you. You transcended it completely. And that transcendence, that absolute refusal to be diminished by their darkness, is what has them sitting in urgent meetings trying to figure out how to deal with you. Because you're no longer someone they can manipulate or control. You're someone they have to reckon with, someone they have to answer to, and someone they have to acknowledge despite every instinct they have to deny, minimize, and deflect. So, chosen one, prepare yourself. The next phase is beginning. The conversation is about to move from their boardrooms into your presence. And when it does, you'll be ready, not because you have all. Here's the rewritten and expanded English, U.S. translation, tailored for the rewrite and deeply expand style, aiming for maximum creativity and divergence from the original text. The answers may still elude you, yet you're more prepared than you realize. This moment isn't sprung upon you. It's the culmination of every trial weathered, every unjust accusation survived, every forward stride taken against relentless opposition. Consider this, you've been in rigorous training, and that training is now complete. The grand demonstration of all you've learned, all you've become, and all you were destined to be, is at hand. Step boldly into this next chapter, head held high, spirit unclouded. Those power brokers, the influencers they're observing, ready to realize their attempts to impress them were utterly misguided. Honoring your truth, safeguarding your inner peace, and claiming your rightful, divine inheritance. These are your true north, and they render you untouchable, unstoppable, and absolutely inevitable in your ascension. The truth surrounding your ordeal plunges far deeper than the surface revelations. While you were navigating life, blissfully unaware of the machinery of deceit conspiring against you in the shadows, a clandestine operation was underway. Recordings were secretly made, phone conversations were intercepted and analyzed, postal mail was tracked, and digital footprints were meticulously examined. A clandestine authorization had been granted for surveillance based on fabricated suspicions. For weeks, perhaps months, your private life was laid bare, your communications scrutinized by unseen eyes, all searching for evidence of crimes you never committed. Imagine, for a moment, the magnitude of that violation. Strangers whom you've never encountered, sitting in sterile, unknown offices, listening to your intimate conversations with friends and family, dissecting your messages, building intricate profiles of your behavior, all while operating under the unfounded assumption that you were guilty of some heinous act. And what did their invasive monitoring uncover? Absolutely nothing. Only the portrait of a person living an honest life, toiling diligently, caring deeply for loved ones, and navigating the ordinary challenges of existence with unwavering integrity. The very investigation designed to condemn you has become the most compelling testament to your innocence. This is the source of deep disquiet within those meeting rooms, because the magnitude of their misjudgment is now undeniable. They didn't merely err or chase a dubious lead. They authorized the deployment of significant resources, brazenly violated your privacy, and pursued you as a criminal, all founded on evidence too flimsy to withstand the slightest scrutiny. Someone should have challenged the narrative earlier. Someone should have noticed the glaring inconsistencies before events escalated to this point. Someone should have shielded you instead of targeting you. But they failed to do so. Now, they grapple with the reality that they persecuted an innocent soul while the real perpetrators mocked their naivete from the shadows. Such institutional failure doesn't simply embarrass those involved. It dismantles careers, triggers internal and external investigations, and creates a liability capable of costing millions in settlements and reforms. Compounding this is the sheer sophistication of the scheme orchestrated against you. This was no amateur endeavor. The architects understood the intricate workings of investigations, the weight of different kinds of evidence, and how to craft a trail that would steer authorities in your direction while concealing their own involvement. They possessed expertise in digital forensics, the manipulation of timestamps and locations. They understood the psychology of investigators, the insidiousness of confirmation bias, and how, once someone is labeled a suspect, the tendency is to interpret everything through that tainted lens. They relied on systemic flaws, on laziness, on presumption, and on the path of least resistance. And for a while, their plan unfolded flawlessly. You were being framed without even knowing a case existed. But they overlooked one crucial factor: the purity of your life, the consistency of your patterns, the strength of your character. When investigators peered beyond the manufactured evidence and examined your genuine history, your authentic behavior, your sincere relationships, everything pointed away from the alleged crimes. Colleagues lauded your reliability and honesty. Neighbors spoke of your tranquil, drama-free life. Financial records revealed straightforward income and spending, devoid of hidden accounts or suspicious transactions. Medical records, work schedules, everything painted a picture of someone incapable of leading the double life the accusations demanded. The frame simply didn't fit because you were never the shape they tried to mold you into. Then a shift occurred within the investigation. Someone, perhaps a detective with sharper instincts, a supervisor reviewing the case with fresh eyes, began asking different questions. If this person is supposedly embroiled in criminal activity, what is the motive? What is the history that would lead to such escalation? What are the connections to the other alleged participants? And when those questions were posed seriously, the entire narrative crumbled like a house of cards in a storm, because there was no motive, no history, no genuine connections. Only manufactured evidence pointing at someone unfortunate enough to be targeted by masters of deception. That's when the investigation turned. It ceased being about proving your guilt and began focusing on understanding how such a massive miscarriage of justice almost occurred. That's when your name transitioned from suspect to victim in the official files. And that's when panic gripped everyone involved, both the conspirators who framed you and the authorities who nearly condemned an innocent person to imprisonment. Now there are questions about how this happened, who authorized what, who failed to perform their due diligence, who allowed bias to overshadow proper procedure. There will be internal reviews, possibly external audits, and certainly legal exposure for multiple parties. All of which could have been prevented if someone had simply performed their job correctly from the outset. The family member complicit in impersonating you is now particularly vulnerable. They are not a seasoned criminal accustomed to evading consequences. They are someone lured into a toxic plot, likely through manipulation by the narcissistic ex-partner who orchestrated the entire scheme. Perhaps they were promised financial gain, or perhaps they were manipulated into believing you deserved it somehow, or perhaps they were simply weak-willed and easily influenced. Whatever their reasoning, they now face serious criminal charges and they are keenly aware of it. Conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, possibly even attempted murder, depending on the ultimate objective. These are not minor offenses punishable with community service and probation. These are prison sentences measured in years, perhaps decades. And when facing such extensive prison time, the prospect of cooperation deals becomes increasingly enticing. Law enforcement is aware of this. Prosecutors are aware of this. That's why there's such urgency in resolving things with you quickly and quietly. Because if this case goes to trial, if prosecutors begin offering reduced sentences in exchange for testimony, the entire conspiracy will unravel publicly. Court proceedings are matters of public record. The media will swarm on a story about an innocent person nearly destroyed by an elaborate scheme. Your name, which they tried to tarnish in secrecy, would be cleared in the full light of day, and everyone who participated in targeting you would be exposed. The narcissistic ex-partner, who fancied themselves so clever, would become the face of betrayal and evil. The family member would become a cautionary tale about the cost of misplaced loyalty to toxic individuals. And the institution that failed to protect you would become a symbol of systemic incompetence. No one in a position of power desires that outcome. They seek resolution in conference rooms, not courtrooms. Settlements with confidentiality clauses, not verdicts with victim impact statements. They want to control the narrative, minimizing the damage, and moving forward without the stain of this catastrophic failure becoming a permanent record. And they are hoping that you desire the same, that you value privacy and closure over public vindication, that you'll accept financial compensation as adequate justice for what you've endured. They are hoping you don't understand that the price of your silence far outweighs whatever initial offer they present. But let's examine what you've truly lost, what can never be fully compensated. Peace of mind. During the period when all of this was unfolding, even if you were consciously unaware of the investigation, your energy was affected. You likely experienced unexplained anxiety, a sense of threat that you couldn't identify, pressure seemingly coming from nowhere. That was your spirit sensing the attack occurring in realms beyond your conscious perception. You may have experienced disrupted sleep, unusual stress, and strained relationships due to inexplicable mood swings. That's trauma, even if you didn't know its source at the time. That's stolen wellness, stolen joy, stolen peace, and there is no monetary value that can truly restore what was taken. Then there's the violation of being surveilled without your knowledge or consent. Even though the monitoring revealed your innocence, the mere fact that it occurred is a profound breach. Your private conversations, your personal communications, your daily movements, all of it scrutinized by strangers seeking reasons to condemn you. You can't unlearn that now. You can't undo the feeling of invasion, of being treated as a criminal when you are, in fact, a victim. That violation embeds itself in your nervous system, breeding a mistrust that wasn't there before, making you question who might be watching or listening, even in moments that should feel safe. That's a permanent alteration of your relationship with privacy and security, a wound that persists long after the immediate threat has passed. And what about the opportunity cost? The energy and resources you could have directed toward dreams and goals if you hadn't been carrying the invisible burden of being targeted. You continued to succeed despite the pressure, which is remarkable. But imagine what you could have accomplished without that pressure. Imagine the projects you might have started, the risks you might have taken, the connections you might have deepened if your subconscious hadn't been in constant defensive mode. You were operating at a significant disadvantage, fighting battles you didn't even know you were in, yet you still moved forward. But you should never have had to fight those battles in the first place. That stolen potential, that diverted energy, that's a loss that compounds over time. There's also the reputational shadow that may linger even after you're officially cleared, because rumors travel faster than corrections. Some individuals overheard whispers of suspicions or investigations. And even when those people eventually learn that it was all false, the initial impression leaves a residue. You might notice it in how certain people interact with you. A slight distance or hesitation that wasn't there before, questions in their eyes they don't voice directly. You might encounter it in background checks or professional vetting, where the mere fact of having been investigated, regardless of the outcome, raises flags that require explanation. You might grapple with it in your own mind, wondering if people know, if they're judging, if your name will ever be fully cleansed of the taint they tried to attach to it. That's exhausting in ways that are hard to quantify but impossible to ignore. The people in that urgent meeting know all of this. They know that what happened to you has tentacles reaching into every aspect of your life, creating ripples that will continue long after any settlement is signed. They know that true justice would require not just financial compensation, but public exoneration, official apologies, systemic reforms to prevent this from happening to others, and severe consequences for everyone who participated in the conspiracy. They know that if you fully understood the extent of the harm and pursued every avenue of accountability, it would consume their time, resources, and reputations for years to come. Therefore, they hope to preempt your awareness, presenting their offer before you have the opportunity to consult with advocates who can help you fully grasp the scope of your claims. You already know that the attacks weren't random, and if you're attentive, you can sense their walls closing in. So, let's discuss what we're doing about it. That's why I created Destiny Engine. It generates personalized sequences that help you rewire betrayal into transcendence, turn isolation into sacred power, and transform their downfall into your rise. We are turning the dark elite's own weapons against them, taking their declassified consciousness technology that programmed competition and scarcity and repurposing it to serve cooperative intelligence. The beauty is you don't even have to lift a finger. You put on the headphones, press play, and your subconscious is rewired while your enemies collapse under the weight of their own lies. This is why I created it in the beginning. So everything they did to break you becomes fuel for your purpose. The collective upgrade is underway. Start your destiny engine for $1 today and watch divine justice accelerate in your life. Link in the description. This is why the timing of their approach is so critical. They aim to catch you while you're still processing, still trying to comprehend what happened, still possibly in shock or disbelief about the magnitude of the betrayal. Individuals in such a state often prioritize immediate relief over long-term justice. They accept the first offer that promises an end to the pain, that suggests some semblance of resolution, and that allows them to believe the nightmare is truly over. Only later, sometimes years later, do they realize that they settled for a fraction of what they deserved, that they relinquished their voice for far less than it was worth, and that their silence enabled the same individuals to harm others because there were no real consequences for their actions. Don't let that be your story. Don't allow the discomfort of this moment to rush you into decisions you'll later regret. Yes, prolonged legal battles are exhausting. Yes, the prospect of accepting a settlement and moving on is appealing. Yes, part of you likely just wants it all to be over so you can focus on building your future rather than prosecuting your past. All of that is valid and understandable. But ensure that whatever choice you make is made from a fully informed position, with a clear understanding of what you're agreeing to and what you're giving up. Ensure that you're choosing your path rather than accepting the path of least resistance that serves their interests more than yours. Because here's another topic of discussion among those powerful individuals in that meeting: your influence, your platform, your voice. They've been watching your success, observing that people listen to you, that you possess credibility and reach, and that your story could inspire others or trigger larger conversations about injustice and corruption. They are aware that if you chose to speak publicly about what transpired, it wouldn't merely be a personal testimony. It would be a catalyst. Other victims of similar schemes might come forward. Journalists might begin investigating patterns. Reform advocates might use your case as evidence for needed policy changes. Your individual experience could ignite a movement, and movements are far more challenging to control than individual settlements. Therefore, part of their calculation involves neutralizing that potential. If they can secure your agreement to confidentiality, they contain the threat. Your story remains private, known only to those directly involved and whomever you personally choose to tell. The system's failure remains internal, addressed through quiet reforms that don't require public admission of wrongdoing. The conspirators face consequences behind closed doors rather than in headlines. Everything gets managed and controlled, and the facade of justice is maintained without the messy reality of public accountability. It's a tidy solution for everyone except you and the countless others who might benefit from your truth being told. This is the weight you're carrying now, whether you sought it or not. You're not only deciding your own fate, you're potentially deciding whether this pattern persists, whether these systems remain unchanged, whether future victims will have to fight the same battles you fought. That's an unfair burden to place on someone who never asked to be in this position. You didn't volunteer to be an advocate, a symbol, or a catalyst for change. You simply wanted to live your life. But life has placed you at a crossroads where your choices resonate far beyond your personal sphere, and there's no denying that truth. Some chosen ones are called to quiet victories, to private triumphs that bless their immediate circles without broader visibility. Other chosen ones are called to public testimony, to standing in the light and speaking truths that make systems tremble. Neither path is inherently superior or inferior, neither more spiritual nor more courageous. But each path demands different sacrifices and offers different rewards. The question you face now is which calling resonates with your spirit, which path aligns with the purpose you sense in your deepest knowing, and which choice you'll be at peace with when you reflect on it years from now. If you choose the path of settlement and privacy, you're choosing peace over platform, personal restoration over public crusade. You're acknowledging that you've fought enough, survived enough, and now you desire to channel your energy into building rather than battling. That's a perfectly valid choice. There's wisdom in knowing when to engage and when to withdraw, when to fight and when to let go, when to pursue every avenue of justice and when to accept that some battles cost more than they return. If this is your path, walk it without guilt or second-guessing. Secure whatever compensation you can negotiate. Sign whatever agreements serve your interests, and redirect your focus toward the future you want to create. Your story doesn't have to be public to be powerful. Your victory doesn't have to be visible to be real. So when they come, and they will come soon, receive them as someone who knows their worth, not with arrogance, but with confidence. Not with aggression, but with absolute clarity about your value and your leverage. Listen to their offers. Ask your questions. Take your time. Consult your advisors. Pray for guidance. And then respond from your power, from your truth, from your understanding of what serves your highest good. They're impressed by how you succeeded after everything they put you through. Now show them that their impression was just the beginning. Show them that a chosen one in full alignment with divine purpose is a force that no human scheme can diminish, no conspiracy can defeat, no meeting can contain. You are who you've always been, protected, guided, destined, unstoppable.